Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the eDiscovery channel. Tom O'Connor here from hot, humid, and waiting on hurricanes. The three H's of summer in New Orleans. New Orleans, Louisiana, with my always compatriot Rocky Messing, who is still in Charm City, right, Rocky? You're just not going home because it's 200 degrees in Israel?
Something like that. This is a nice long trip. So I'm here till after ILTA. So
good. Yeah. Good. Excellent. And we'll see each other at ILTA.
Absolutely.
And we are very pleased to have with us as our special guest today, Moncia Enand. Did I get that right?
You did.
All right.
Ooh, look at Tom.
I have butchered more than a few names. Yeah, I have butchered more than a few names on this show. That's for sure. Moncia is not just the CEO of Zapproved, but also you're the founder of the company, which is something we want to talk about and get some perspective on in a minute. So thanks so much for joining us. You're in Portland or suburban Portland?
I am. Thank you so much for having me. It's so fun to be here. I love your show and the format and the way you guys do this. And so it's really nice. I think it's great for our industry profession. So yes, I'm in Portland. Tom, you got me thinking. But I'm in Portland, Oregon, which is normally a beautiful, probably the most ideal place to spend your summer. We just have really moderate temperature, not very much humidity.
Yeah.
While we rain 9 months, 10 months out of the year, July and August are dry.
But
many years ago
to have a gorgeous, month or two.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
there.
I lived in Seattle for years. My late wife Gail was from the Seattle area, and at some point, I don't know how it happened, but I ended up working for Fios, and I used to take it, which was headquartered in Portland, and I used to take the train down. Used to love the train ride because the train station, I don't know if it's better now, I hope it is. The train station in Seattle was a dump, and the train station in Portland was beautiful. They redid that gorgeous old brick building, and I only had to walk a block to be inside the free bus zone, so I could get off the train, walk to the bus, and get a free bus it wasn't that far, into the center of town. And I used to love to come down.
What's the big bookstore there, right in the middle of? Oh yeah, I think I got lost in there and could have spent 8 days.
Easily.
I love it. Do they still have downtown in that center block someplace? There was somebody, I don't know how they had done it, but a parking lot got taken over by all the food trucks.
Oh yeah.
So there was an entire block of food trucks in what used to be a parking lot. It was great.
You're hitting on some controversial Portland stuff, because that one that's near Fios is now a Ritz-Carlton.
Oh,
so,
talk about a little change in the per square footage there, huh?
A little bit.
Did they relocate?
There are other food cart locations, but that one, which was one of my favorites, most recently, the one that you're talking about.
Yeah. And I used to love to come down. We would come down the 4th of July. They did a big blues festival along the river there, which was a lot of New Orleans musicians would come out for that. Yeah. And I got to know, I think he's back with you guys now, Brad Harris. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Brad, we were at Fios at the same time, along with Mary Mack. Those are a couple of, talk about pioneers. There were a couple of real pioneers. Fios was one of the early ones. They were right there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
great people.
So tell us then, Rocky, you're champing at the bit. You got a question, I can tell. Go ahead.
Well, I've got a question, but I think I'm going to hold off on that question until we get a little history here, because it might get answered. But let's start off with the classic initial start.
Well, we always start, Monica, by saying, how did you get into this wacky business of ours? I'm particularly interested, though, as I mentioned to you earlier, in founding the company. We have, we talked about the shortage of VC money controlled by women. We have a shortage of companies controlled by women, not controlled. That sounds ominous, but, owned, operated, run by. I can only think of one other off the top of my head that's owned by a woman. And I remember seeing, and of course, the whole controversy discussion about there's just not enough women in tech. We don't see women in IT. We don't see women running law firms either. So I guess that's not surprising in our business. But I saw a fascinating.
But before we get to Tom, you're jumping to like controversial topics and like things that are going to get people riled up. And let's move on. Come on, let's get some background.
Well, I saw this great interview with. Is it? This is awful. Figured it out. I don't know. I can't remember the woman's name. Is it Melinda Gates? Melinda? I always call her Belinda.
Bill's ex-wife.
Yes. And she was talking about that subject because, of course, it's near and dear to her heart. And she said, really, we shouldn't focus on college or post-grad. She said, women, young girls, are not being told that math is cool when they're in the 7th grade. That they're started in really early on. Oh, math is for boys and science is for boys. And why don't you take a typing class? And, that sort of thing. And, she said, we got to start them on that path back then. And if we do that, then obviously they'll gravitate to it. They'll go to a college where they can study that and it'll, it's going to work its way up. So I'm curious, how did you not only get into the tech business in our space, but how did you get to the point where you founded a company? Tell us about your background here. What was that path like?
Thanks. Yeah, my family came to this country from India, and so I was born in West Virginia, but my parents had been in the country.
Wait a minute, your parents moved from India to West Virginia? What was that all about?
Talk about my mom, talk about culture shock. My dad was in graduate school at Marshall University in West Virginia.
That makes more sense.
Yes.
So and he had a graduate student stipend. My mom didn't have any right to work, and they had 3 children older than me. I was the 4th and came along pretty quickly there. So it was a tough time for them. And I think, it's kind of a classic immigrant story. My dad always told the story that, he came to this country, and I thank God for this opportunity. And the fact that he did do that, like he came to this country to give his kids a better education and the ability to take on more opportunities. And I think that just landed. They pounded it into us. I think it was just like a constant refrain in our house. Many immigrant households are like,
you're getting a better opportunity here, so you're going to take advantage of it.
That's right. You will take it. What was he studying?
He was studying. He was a textile chemist, so he was studying chemistry. But as you might know, that in the 70s, the textile industry kind of all the textile companies moved to
polyester
and went to Bangladesh. And so he got laid off. Actually, when you ask me how did I become a founder, this is actually I think a big part of it, because my dad kept getting laid off. He'd move from job to job and get laid off because the factory would close and move to Mexico or move to, out of the US.
Yeah.
And they moved around a lot, 4 kids. And my mom at one point just got sick of it. And she just said, I'm sick of moving. I'm sick of you getting laid off. I'm going to start a business. And she actually secretly started a business without his knowledge. She hid money every week from her grocery money in a thing. And she saved it up. And when she had I think she had $5,000. And when she had $5,000, she said, I'm going to start a business. And she didn't tell him. So it was all a lie. And she kind of got this little spot in a mall, and she started selling in a kind of rundown mall. And she started selling toys and gifts. And she opened a little gift shop, and it did well pretty quickly. And then she told him, and he was mad, but he realized that once he got laid off again, that they had this business, and they ended up getting a couple more gift shops, and they had at one time 3 gift shops, and that's how they lived the rest of their life.
Where was that? And where was this?
Where was it?
Charlotte, North Carolina.
Oh. Nice.
So they ended up never moving after that. We had gone from West Virginia to Chicago, we moved around a few times in the Chicago suburban area. Then we moved to North Carolina. So, when I was young, we moved a lot. But I think my mom just said, owning your own business is a good thing.
Yeah. And it's a good lesson to teach.
I like the story about your mom, though. That reminds me of that. What was the movie about the young British kid? I forget if he was Indian or Pakistani, but he was a huge Bruce Springsteen fan. And
I love that movie.
Right?
Yeah.
But his father would have nothing to do with it. It's music. It's not, this is crazy. Great. Well, do you remember the name of it? It was I think it was the title of Thunder Road or something. Yeah, it was a Bruce.
Okay.
Rocky, you'd love it.
Such a cute movie.
Yeah. Would, but I don't think I ever heard of that movie.
And he ends up winning a contest to go to Asbury Park. And then it's a true story. And then he wrote a book about basically the immigrant experience and how hard it was for them in England, where there was a lot of tension. It's very similar to the black-white issues here, and discrimination. And his father was just livid, you got to get a job and get that college degree and go to work. And he's going, no, I'm going to be a writer. He wanted to be a writer. And Springsteen's lyrics inspired him. And then he ended up writing a book the movie was based on his own book. Which was just fascinating.
Wasn't it cool at the end of the movie when they showed when the real pictures came out? I actually welled up. I was like, oh my God.
He got to meet Bruce, and they became friends. Bruce wrote it, I think, an intro to the book, and approved the movie. Awesome. He said, this is cool. It was very cool.
It's really cool.
Yeah, but you're talking about your mom. Okay. Hiding it from your dad reminded me of that. Yeah. So then, so you're in Charlotte. How did you? I presume you were forced to go to college by your parents, right?
I think I have two older brothers and an older sister, and I think sometimes people ask me, because I studied electrical and computer engineering at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, and people say how'd you choose that? And I actually had to really think hard about that question later, because I realized I don't think I chose that.
I just think I did.
I was just kind of told, here's what you're doing.
I think my brothers went to my parents and said, she needs to go to Carnegie Mellon. And my brother was living in Pittsburgh at the time, and my second brother, and he said, she needs to go to Carnegie Mellon and she needs to study electrical engineering. And I was like,
I'll take care of her. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Exactly.
But listen, it worked out. No complaints so far.
Now, did you have courses like that in high school, though? Were there things to support that interest in high school?
Yeah. I mean, I was good at math and science. I mean, you don't know what's cause and effect, right? Is it because everyone in your family is math and science, and because they think that's really important that you become good at it? Or do you become good at it and then you
natural ability?
I don't know. But I think I was always good at math and science. And so it was always kind of like a foregone conclusion that, you should be an engineer. And so, your comments about Melinda Gates saying that girls weren't told that, I just was always told it. So I just thought, I'm going to be an engineer.
It's a natural, right?
Yeah.
But that sort of reinforces what she said, right? If you get that support at a young enough age, right. Yeah, you're gonna go ahead and go with it. Yeah, that's interesting.
But the interesting thing, actually, just to diverge on that for just a moment,
sure.
What you said about kind of encouraging girls, I learned later in life that actually the number of women and men in computer science was at parity in the 70s.
Really?
In college. Yeah, they were. But what happened, and it's attributed a lot to when Radio Shack started, and they had the TRS-80, and they started an advertising campaign, and it was at Christmas. It was buy your son. It was all about video games, and the first application of the personal computer was really video games, and that was all targeted in their ads at boys. And so sometime in the early 80s, parents bought their boys their first personal computer, and they did not buy their girls that. And so then became a generation of boys who grew up with computers and girls who didn't. And then when they got to college, the professors would start not at 0, they would start at here, because all the boys were here.
Right.
And the girls would apply and start, and the dropout rate was really high for girls.
Okay.
And so that's actually one of the big things so it's funny because you have to start them early, but then also, and then of course the motherhood tax and the sort of like inclusive issues that happen in the corporation cause women to quit at far higher rates. So it's not enough to fill the pipeline. It's not a pipeline problem solely. Obviously, you have to fill the pipeline, but you have to also create a situation where they can stay.
That's interesting because Gail, my late wife, I don't think you knew her, Monica. Rocky knew her really well. She had graduated from high school in Seattle and was a rocker. She went off to LA to, make her fame and fortune like a million other young girls, and ended up working as an exotic dancer like a million other girls, and ended up as a bartender at the Rainbow Room. She had a little 10-year silo there where she kind of strayed.
But it made for insanely good stories.
Oh, yes. So, she had a million good stories, 1.5 million good stories. Yeah. But when she kind of got back on track, if you will, decided to go back to college, and she went to she had moved home, went to a community college. Her brother, who was an engineer at Boeing, bought her a Commodore 64. It was at that same time in the early days. I don't know, I have to go back to him now and ask him why. What was it that you saw that said Gail would,
would be a
gravitate to that? There was certainly nothing in my experience with her that would indicate she'd be interested in a computer, unless it was the KISS version of the Commodore 64.
Right.
Which I'm sure there is one, knowing Gene Simmons. But and she just took to it like a duck to water. She loved it, and used it in school to type her papers and blah blah blah. But then took off, became a law librarian, and then a marketing person in legal. So you're right. You still, even if you've got the predisposition, you got to have
encouragement to go out,
the opportunity at the professional level to get exposed. That's interesting. So what did you do when you got out of college?
So I came to work for Intel. I got recruited actually 30 years ago today. I was an intern at Intel here in Oregon. I don't mean to sound overly sexist. You don't look like you could have had a job in a major industry 30 years ago. Rocky and I do, but you do not. That is very, very nice to say.
Where were you working? In Pittsburgh?
No. I came to Oregon. So that's what brought me to Oregon. I was working on a microprocessor project, and I kind of quickly came for a summer. I loved it. Of course, if you come to summer in Oregon, you're like, this place is great.
From Pittsburgh.
I don't know.
Right.
Like, I don't know. This is a great place to live.
Right. Why haven't I been here the whole time?
So I wanted to come back. And
then September. Right.
Well, it was years before I started to realize, wow, this place is pretty depressing. But yeah. So I came back after graduation and worked full time for Intel, and worked there for kind of the early part of my career. And it was really formative because it was, at that time, it was 1992, 93. It was like early 90s. And I think it was just like there was a lot of boom going on in semiconductors and software, and the company was growing, and we were just encouraged to take a lot of opportunities and risks and try things. And I don't think I could have had a better start to my career. So it was an amazing place to start.
Can I ask, did you, because this is a refrain that we hear pretty often, in that first position, your manager, highly encouraging, like a leader type, or was it a little rough?
Good question. I think I had decent managers. It was a very male-dominated group. On the microprocessor projects, there were probably 400 people working. Less. It was probably a dozen, maybe 24 at most women. So it was and Andy Grove was the founder, and he was Hungarian immigrant and he had fled Hungary, so like it was a very rough culture in terms of like he believed in what he called constructive confrontation, which had lots of interpretations. And that was a value, that was what you were taught. Like you had to just say what you, actually, I think, there's a big Intel presence in Israel. And I think the culture there too is like very direct, very say what you mean. And so, and it's, I just kind of learned it. Like, it was like, I was 20 years old, 30 years ago. And when I started at Intel. And so I just was like, that's how I grew up. And like, you just say it and you just confront everything.
Don't worry about it. And
which I do that. People just say I'm rude. Get it.
It's all in the tone, Tom.
Yeah, that's it. I got to work on my delivery. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I kind of rose through the ranks, honestly, very quickly and loved my job and took on some management responsibilities, moved into software, spent most of my career there in software, loved it. But then decided, I had babies, and my husband was also working for Intel. And we were, but this was before, like, we dial up or whatever, so we didn't work from home and we were there. We used to, we were young and before we had kids, we used to go there at like 7 or 8 in the morning. And then we used to stay until 7 or 8 at night.
Why not?
We ate all 3 meals there. There were lots of young people there. They all ate 3 meals there. I didn't think it was odd, So it was kind of an intense place, but once you had kids, it was not very manageable. So I decided to take some time off and stay home with the kids. And I did that for about 4 years and I kind of got itchy. I realized how much I missed working. And I mean, I love my kids, of course, but I really love technology.
No excuses needed. Exactly.
No. You're talking to parents here. We get it.
Yeah.
I really do love them. Now I see them occasionally, they come back. But I love technology. I love working. I think through that experience, I just, and I didn't love tech. You used to ask me about college and it was chosen for me. And I don't think I actually had a passion for it or I think my passion for it grew in like being on the job. Was where at Intel was where it kind of like, oh, wow, look at how transformational this can be. And look at the things that like little old us are doing. And what is
actually able to accomplish.
Yeah. And the rapid pace of change. So I think I just got so itchy. But and this lens, so I decided that I wanted to not go back to Intel when I wanted to go back to the workplace because I wanted to try something else. And I worked at IBM and I became really
something different. Yeah. Let's go to work for a bigger conglomerate.
I know.
Total
with more men.
Exactly.
And that's when I realized like, hey, I gotta do a startup. Like I can't do this. I want
the true IBM experience, huh? Oh,
yeah.
No.
Yeah, the bureaucracy it was not a direct culture. Like, the say what you mean, like that culture I was like, whoa, what are these people? Why are they not saying like what we're all thinking? Like, I can't believe we're sitting in this culture.
Well, that was an older, they were more like a bureaucracy, like a government agency almost in their approach. Yeah.
And so, and that was pretty different from Intel. And I was like, okay, this is not for me. I need to be entrepreneurial. And so I went to a startup, actually a venture-backed startup with kind of top tier venture capitalists. We had Bessemer, Redpoint, kind of the best of the best in the Valley on the board. I was not a founder or CEO, but I was an executive. And I kind of learned about how venture capital worked. And I got a little disillusioned with actually venture capital there. Imagine that. And I decided that, oh, well, if I'm doing a software startup and the rise of the cloud and software as a service, it's all getting more economical to build software. I'm just going to bootstrap. I'm just going to do it without outside funding. And so, I talked to my husband and it's like 2008. And I talked to my husband and I'm like, hey, I want to take some money and I want to quit my job. I'm going to stop earning. I'm going to take some money and I want to start a business. And he's like, and I want to get a few people. And
Okay.
hire some to
Have you heard
spend
about
money.
this thing called eDiscovery?
I actually had no idea what that was. at the
Yeah.
time.
No,
Like,
you're
how-
ahead of
how
that curve.
How did that come about?
Yeah.
Like what?
Well,
Legal, like from
Yeah.
yeah.
so we'll circle back to the beginning of the conversation. So I built some software that was called Zapproved, and it was a workflow kind of approval process. And I had lots of different industries and people that were interested in using it. And we went to beta with that software in August of 2008. And we went to beta, free beta, and we had all these people using the software. Kind of went viral actually, and got picked up in the tech blogs, and people started using it. And in September of 2008, Lehman Brothers failed. The world's like, yeah, if you remember, and remember, I told my husband, I'm not gonna work for a while. I'm gonna take some of our money. I'm gonna pour it into this business. It was like, oh wow.
What timing? Yeah.
Yeah.
But you had a post. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I mean it was just a scary.
You had a post this week about Brad and somebody else going to a conference and people talking about, was it collections?
No, preservations. Yeah.
Preservation. Right. Is that when the light went on? Like what?
No,
I could do something
so
there?
I hadn't met Brad, but he was one of the, so in August, September, Lehman Brothers failed. We were all, there's 4 of us in my house, and we were all just sitting there. And I was like, oh my gosh, you guys, first of all, the economy's falling off a cliff. If we're going to stay doing this, I mean, I thought about quitting and just trying to get a job or just stop spending money on the business. I actually, got to that point at some point, and my brother, the one that lived in Pittsburgh, called me and said, no, keep going. I'm going to give you some money. I'm going to start investing in you, and you got to keep going. Yeah. And so I said, okay, well, if we keep going, we're going to have to pick one thing, be the best at it. And we need to figure out, it needs to be counter-recessionary, and it needs to be non-discretionary spend. And so we went through all the people who were using Zapproved, and we called them. And we were like, can we talk to you? Why are you using this? And one of those people was Brad Harris. And I was like, hey, who are you? And he was like, I work at this company, Fios, and I'm using Zapproved with my clients to do litigation readiness preparedness. And I'm using it as a legal hold solution. And I was like, what is a legal hold?
What's that?
And I had no idea. So I went downtown to the food carts near Fios, and we sat with Brad, and he explained. He was like, a legal hold, here's what it is, and here's the writing requirement. And the one thing I realized in kind of being on my entrepreneurial journey is, entrepreneurs talk about, just timing the market so well. I don't think entrepreneurs can time the market. Like, I don't think anybody can.
You don't have control, right?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, what you have.
Well, I was going to say, you don't control the timing. What you can control, though, is the ability to find the solution that generally everyone actually needs. Like that's the key. And then it's just okay, as long as you've got that right solution, people are going to buy it, people are going to use it. It would work whether the timing is today, whether it was 3 years ago, as long as you're not ahead of the game. Like, as long as you're not trying
too far ahead. You want to be a little far ahead. Yeah. But you also need to pick, like you picked litigation whole by talking to Brad. Thank God you didn't pick hosting, right? I mean, you could be in a business space and there's still, dips and.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
And sorry, I want to back up just 1 second. So the name, because that was my question that I was going to.
Oh, yeah. Good point.
Earlier. Okay, so I think I get it in terms of approval process but how the name come up, was it the family? Was it like, one of your kids was like, put a Z in front of it?
The Grateful Dead, you just opened a dictionary and there it was. Like,
yep.
No, at that time to get a short domain name, we knew it was something with approvals. And to get a short domain name, people were adding a Z to the front of things.
Oh,
okay.
Because domain names were selling out, and like you couldn't get words as domain names. And so I was like, oh, Z sounds fast. we want it to sound like Zap, like, okay, that kind of works. And I talked
so
to
it's
some marketing people. Yeah,
You
it's
know,
like Zapproved, but yeah.
Rocky,
We're
coming
supposed
from Baltimore, and myself having gone to school in Baltimore, you know, the phrase zaps has a whole other connotation to it, right? I'm thinking a big bag of chips.
Yep.
Right.
Oh.
There's a brand name out there. And yeah. So, all right. And when I first heard it, I thought, is it because of my Spanish background? I thought, is it something to do with shoes? What is this?
Zappos, yeah.
Yeah.
We get a lot of that.
Yeah.
So I learned to hate the name, but you kind of, this is the problem with names. It's like,
right.
It's like, okay.
Get name recognition, you go with it, right?
After you invest in it, you're like, okay, am I going to change the name? And like, no.
Right.
I mean,
rebranding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Acme Litigation Hold Company.
Yeah.
Right.
We just focused on the product and focused
Yeah.
on being the best product at that time and being in the cloud and easy to get started, easy to use, secure, all of the things that enterprise customers want. And, you were talking about timing, and it's just, for me, it's like, okay, you got to find out where the waves are. Like, you got to find out where the trends are. And
like surfing.
those trends,
It's like
and
surfing.
you surf, and you just have to position your surfboard somewhere so that when the wave comes, you can ride it like hell. It's like, I'm just going to ride this wave. And I think it was like, talking to Brad, first, I was really a believer in software as a service in the cloud and wanted to build that native. Then talking to Brad, it was like, okay, this litigation hold thing is going to get more and more important. There's no scenario where, we do cloud locations, mobile devices were getting bigger. It was like, okay, if this is the world that we're going to email, everything was starting to, it's like, okay, if that's the case, then this litigation hold thing, it feels like it's a trend. And so
well, then the rules came along, right? Was that a big epiphany for you, or, and I got you a moment like, oh, now they changed the rules to recognize this stuff. Ooh, we're there.
Well, actually, Judge Shinlin released the pension committee opinion.
Oh, yeah.
We were going to legal tech in 2009, or I think it was 2009.
Yep.
And it was our first, we took Zapproved, and we changed a lot of words, and we were like, okay, we're gonna launch Legal Hold Pro. And so we were about to launch, and the pension committee dropped, and we were like, oh my gosh, like someone, whether her name is Shira Shinlin or God, I don't know, but I was like, okay, someone is smiling upon us.
That's right.
And so
it's a mitzvah. You take it. You just take it, right?
We wrote this white paper, circulated it, legal tech. That was our big, kind of, and we got traction fairly immediately with massive customers, like big giant customers.
So I got to ask you though, coming from your background, supportive family, Intel with an interesting internal, what's it like working with lawyers? What was the first legal tech like? Right?
Yeah.
There is a talk about culture change, right?
Yeah, it was. Definitely.
Although you do
very different.
You do a lot of corporate work, so you're dealing with GCs who are a kinder, gentler version of lawyers. But still, that must have been a bit of a shock. Like, wow, what an interesting business.
It was, but I think you pointed out the sort of corporate nature. I've realized, and I think, first of all, we just went through that history, and I can't sort of comment on it without saying how grateful and privileged and it's been the ride of my life. It has exceeded my expectations, and professionally, growing as a human, the relationships that I've made, the friendships, I just can't say enough about how grateful I am that I was able to do that and able to be on that journey and where it's taken me now. But having said that, what you said, I was like, wow, this is different than tech, definitely. But we really shaped our community around the in-house counsel. And that was what we said is Zapproved is always going to be on the side of the in-house counsel. Yeah. And not everybody is always that way, because a lot of legal tech, that growing up story ended us on the side of in-house. But most people, if you're chasing big pots of money, because you have, whatever venture capital, you're going to go for law firms and legal service providers. And so companies grow up differently that way, because we really grew up like knowing deeply how large enterprises, complex large enterprises work and what their needs were, as opposed to like understanding the law firm side or the legal service provider side.
Yeah. And it's insanely different. It really, it's amazing how different the environments are, and because one is really just about money, and the other one is about the business needs. I mean, no, it's pushing whatever the business is. Yeah.
The other thing is that it's different, which inured to your benefit, I'm sure, is that meeting lawyers at Legal Tech, I'm sure you met a lot of people who knew nothing about technology and still don't. Right. But inside the corporate environment, you've got people who have robust IT departments and know them and trust them, and they're part of the business operations procedure. There's not the like that session we tried to speak on it at ILTA. Rocky and I put in a proposal to speak on a session that was called "Nobody Told Me There Was Going to Be Math,"
right.
Which should be the motto for lawyers in technology, right?
All lawyers,
yeah. So but for you to go with corporate, those people, it's a different thing for them. They don't distrust technology; they trust technology, and they have good technology staffs. So
well, and again, when we talk about surfboards and waves and trends, they don't sort of have a choice. Right. The corporations, I mean, especially like, pandemic hits and all of a sudden everybody's remote and everybody's using Slack and Zoom chat and all the different, and I liken the sort of sources to, I sometimes call it the war on terror. Like as soon as you solve one source, 3 more are going to pop up somewhere else, right? And you're just going to continue to and if anybody thinks we're at the end of that, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Nope. Exactly.
We're just going to keep getting a more and more variety of technology. Yeah. And for people who think they can slow it down or control it or not use it, the genie's out of the bottle. So.
Bill Gates had a great interview years ago when they were talking about the future of technology. He was a guy who didn't, he kind of poo-pooed the cloud when it first came out. It was all behind the firewall. I mean, those were his blinders. But he said, when it comes to competition, I'm not worried about Steve Jobs or Larry Ellison. These are guys who we all think along the same lines, and we have businesses, and we know what he said. I'm worried about some 16-year-old kid who's in his garage, right, in Peoria,
come up with something,
who's thinking about something that I haven't even thought of, right? It's like meeting aliens, like this generation of kids coming, right? And it's like, wow,
you never know.
I didn't think of that. Yeah.
So Monica, over the last 15 years, what surprised you the most? Like, what's something that, like, thinking back over the last 15 years in the business, like, what's something that was just like a total, like, unexpected, shocking, like, I can't believe that this is where we are?
Yeah. I mean, I think there have been a series probably of surprises. The first was that we got traction. I mean, and I'll tell this story now, but I was scared to tell the story a long time ago. And, early on, we got giant corporations to sign on to Legal Hold Pro, and we were still in my house. And I was like, oh, they don't know that we live in my, like that. And it was like
corporate address. Right.
Yeah. We just had to sort of, almost fake it till you make it, create a corporate presence and create a support system and create we just had to, I was like, I can't believe these giant companies are doing business with us in my house. So that was very cool, but also scary. And then definitely, I really.
So you're saying getting an office in a building surprised you?
Yeah. We did all that and grew up quickly. And I think I think the other big surprise is what Tom was referring to. Like when I first got in, I was like, oh, these litigators, holy crap, like litigation, totally different. And then when I got really focused on the in-house community, what I realized is they all have similar challenges. Like it doesn't matter if they're in the retail or the insurance or that the common thread is that they are overwhelmed trying to deal with the growth of data, the variety of sources, the different types of technology. Yes, they have an IT group, but they don't control the IT group. They have to explain to management, and they have to figure out how to modernize and do more with less. And they're worried about security, and they're worried about all the care abouts and worries were the same. And Tom, you mentioned my post. That's why the conference that we put on, that surprises me every time. I sit in rooms and watch corporations, big corporations that might even sometimes fight each other in court, actually share. I've seen people redact templates, delete, anonymized data, and share presentations they've given and say, here's how you should present this to your management. These are the metrics I track. Here's how.
Right.
The collaboration and the sharing and the supporting each other and kind of
the collegiality,
each other up.
Right?
Yeah.
It reminds me of what it was like when I was growing up in New England, small town in Vermont. And the local lawyer did an incorporation one week and a DUI the next week, and he did everything. They were jack of all trades, and there was that collegiality. I remember talking to Browning Marine about it. I asked him if he missed the courtroom. He said, yeah. He said, but it's different now. He said in the private sector, in the world of law firms, it's all, not just beat them, but burn their house down and spread salt on the ground. But it seems to me the corporate counsel folks are more of a throwback to the days of what I remember in growing up with the law, of collegiality, of willing to share with each other and talk to each other. That's a great point. That's an interesting point, because boy, in the world of private law firms, it's not so collegial. Yeah.
Well,
and I wondered when we first did legal if I would ever love. I did. I had doubts. I was like, okay, we're kind of doing this out of, honestly, it wasn't like it was survival,
right?
It wasn't like I was running to legal because I had a passion for legal technology. I mean, I just didn't. I didn't know much about it, but it was and so in the early years, I was like, okay, we have to survive. Don't think about it. Just do it.
Just go.
Yeah. And then it's the greatest gift in this way. Oh, wow. Holy crap. I didn't expect that. Now I love
it. Working and yeah,
I get people to come visit me. I have current customers who brought their kids' daughters to see me and to meet me after their high school graduation, and we have celebration dinners, and it's I have relationships that I don't know, so life-changing.
Yeah.
Do you think that things are improving for female entrepreneurs? Are there going to be more people like you? Is the opportunity there, or is it still?
I think okay. Yes, it is improving. Absolutely. 100% sure.
Because it had nowhere to go but up, right?
Right.
It couldn't have gotten worse.
That's true. There's still a ways to go, though. I think there is still a ways to go.
Yeah.
But it'll happen. It'll happen. It won't be the same for my daughter, for sure.
Good.
Would you encourage your kid? You said you have 2 kids, right?
Yeah,
so
a son and a daughter.
Would you encourage them to go into some sort of legal related field?
I would, actually. I would. Okay. My son is studying computer science. My daughter's studying economics. But I think if later they decided they wanted to go, they're young, so I think they decided they wanted to go to law school, I would say it's pretty amazing thing to do.
Don't do it. Go to dental school.
I thought
go to dental school, really?
No, not dental school. I
don't
But I thought the question you were going to ask me is would I encourage them to start a company, and I was like,
Right.
Yeah, looking back on it, right? I mean, you say you're great, it's great memories and all, but it was tough, right? I mean, not just physically, emotionally, not just the money, the emotional strain of dealing with all that. I mean, yeah.
I mean,
kudos to you.
I'm doing it right now and something new. And it's like, even though I know it's going to work, I know, like all the pieces are in play, everything, it's still stressful. It's a lot, you got a lot riding on it, especially when you've got a family and it's, you kind of want a paycheck at some point. So
yeah, it's a balancing act. I've been involved with a couple of startups, and Gail was involved with one that fell apart just at the finish line. And there's a lot of things to get right to just get across the finish line and get it going. And then that's just the first, then you realize, wow, that's just the first hurdle, right? Just because I got the business open and I got a couple of clients, I got to, I got the bicycle. It's like learning how to ride the bike when you're 5. Okay, now what?
Well, without the aid of a lot of chemicals, Tom and I actually have the same color hair. And I don't know if it would be, I don't know if it would have happened as fast as it did without the sleepless nights and the stress.
Unfortunately, we are coming to see, this is always happens. We need to schedule these to be like 3 hours long. Like it's I know. But got a couple quick questions to ask you before we move into our final question that we'll go through. The first one that I've got for you is, where's your favorite place to travel?
Well, I just recently, my son goes to school in the UK. And so I just recently was able to visit him, and we decided to go for a long weekend to Copenhagen. And it's my new favorite city. I had not thought I would be interested in that city, but it's beautiful and clean and great food and lots of fun things to do. So I had a great time on that trip.
Awesome. The next one that I've got for you is, what's your favorite book?
Oh, boy. I have a lot of books that I've really enjoyed. Yeah, I have so many. I just recently went, I'll go with something recent. I just recently read The Vanishing Half. I don't know if you're Barack Obama or Michelle Obama had recommended it. And I just thought it was a really cool story that had a lot of different sub-stories in it with different characters and different life experiences. I like stories about, interesting human journeys.
That makes sense. Okay. What's and I don't know that you actually have time for movies, but if you have time for movies, what's your favorite movie to quote? Not your favorite movie, but your favorite movie that like you find yourself quoting all the time.
I might be weird, but my favorite movie of all time, which I do sometimes quote, is Pulp Fiction.
Ooh,
good one. I like it.
It's always been my favorite movie since it came out.
Not a motorcycle, baby. It's a chopper.
Zed's dead. Zed's dead.
Zed's dead, honey.
Exactly.
Okay. Nice. And last one for me. If you can give one sentence, more than one sentence, piece of advice to your younger self, let's say college age, coming out of high school, what would that piece of advice be?
I think it would just be say yes to as many things as you can, try as many things as you can, and don't worry. Like the journey is.
How she did and so that way she could get 2 pieces of advice in there.
I mean, I think what held me back was fear, right? We kind of all held back by like the fear of, and it turns out we shouldn't be so.
So don't be afraid to try.
Yeah.
That works.
Not up, not in, right?
Tom?
Yeah. And I mean, related to the female thing, being brave is important to say to young women.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so
Well-
well, actually, I have one quick question as well, which I know it's like an exercise in
Yeah, are you ready to give up on this one?
No, I'm not, but I'm ready to stop asking it. Okay, Beatles or
Right.
Stones?
Oh, Beatles.
Okay, moving on.
Yep.
Rocky and I
Well,
have
that's
this
hard.
Rocky and I have this ongoing debate.
Yeah.
In any event,
Where
Go
I think I did calculate that we've done about 60 of these interviews, and I think we've only had 2 Stones.
I was
as
going
the
to say
answer.
one.
So, no, I
Maybe 2.
think there were 2. So
2?
yeah. Anyway, but thank you for joining the good side, and Beatles is absolutely where it's at. So yeah.
Although I must say, I listened to a little bit of one of the Stones are on tour right now. They do these mini tours, kind of like Jimmy Buffett.
Yeah.
Jagger's reaching Roger Daltrey status with the voice.
Yeah. Well,
they
I was
should only
saying
do
the-
like one concert a month, I think.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
I was saying the other week that when I went to see McCartney a month ago, also the voice, like, just he's not quite hitting where he
Yeah,
was.
I mean, these guys are like 80
He's
years
80.
old. I mean, it's
Yeah,
understandable.
Yeah.
But I saw a thing, just as an aside, we mentioned the Grateful Dead. I saw a thing with Mickey Hart the other day, one of the drummers from the Dead. He's 80, right? He's
Wow.
80 years old. I mean, in my mind, Mickey
I saw
Hart
him a week
is.
ago.
Yeah.
I saw him
Oh,
a
you
week
saw
ago. I went
how were
to
they?
Dead and Co. In Philly.
Yeah.
They were incredible. It was so good, so much fun.
Did they do drum space?
Of course, they did drums in space. Yes, they
And
did.
did Mickey?
Although Mickey did absolutely. But Bill was out with health issues.
He's been having health issues for a year or so now. Yeah. He's got a home down here, so he hangs out here sometimes, and he's not been in good health. But yeah, they're all 80. It's like
exactly. Yeah. Can't blame them. So okay.
So Monica, if you could spend a day with anybody from our profession, and using that term very, very broadly, including
Living your
technology and all of the companies you've worked for and experience, who would that person be, and what would you do for that day?
I think it would, especially in this moment in time, I think it would be Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And I think I would want to do a workout with her personal trainer that she famously, I would be wanting to lift weights. I would want to lift weights with Ruth Bader Ginsburg. That's definitely.
That's
Wow.
awesome. And would you talk any work, or would you just sit and gain
You don't
whatever
talk
she's
work when
coming
you're
from?
lifting weights, dude. Come
Well,
on.
yeah.
No talking work.
But
You're focused.
just being around greatness, I think, and just all the amazing things that she lived through. So, and been part of.
Yeah.
Cool.
No, that's another one.
All right.
Awesome choice.
So Monica, thanks so much for joining. This has been wonderful. You mentioned it kind of in passing, but I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention your conference.
Oh, thank you.
Go ahead and give a little shout out.
Yep.
Yeah.
Give a plug.
It's a Prex 22. It's in September and beautiful. And I mentioned that some parts of the year in Oregon are not as beautiful, but September in Oregon is beautiful.
Yeah.
You can see it on, it's Prex 22, and we're the presenting sponsor, and you find it on the Zapproved website.
Yeah. Well, always well attended and well spoken of by the people. I've never actually attended, because that's not corporate isn't really my space. I don't. It's hard to believe, looking at me, the corporate counsel don't want to call me up and ask me for advice. I don't get what it is.
I think you would enjoy it.
But there you go. Oh, I'm sure I would. I mean, I know other people who've gone, and like I said, I've known Brad for years, and Craig Ball is an old buddy. He lives here in town now, and some of the judges who come out are colleagues. I won't say friends. That would be presumptuous, but there's I know a number of the people, and they've always spoken highly of it. A good kind of melting pot of thinking going on there, and people exchanging ideas like you described earlier. So that's great. And speaking of which, will you be at ILTA? Will you folks be at ILTA? I usually see Brad
folks
there.
will be at ILTA. I'm not planning to go. I think Brad is planning to go.
Good. because I haven't, I mean, obviously with COVID, there were things, and last year they had it in Vegas, and I didn't want to go to the germ factory. And so
No.
I'm planning on attending this year, and hope to catch up with a bunch of people I haven't seen for 2 years. It's hard to believe. People ask stuff about what you're doing. You talk about your history and the company, everything. And the last year and a half is like a dead zone, right? It's like you say, well, you know, when I last saw, like you just said, Rocky, when I last saw the Grateful Dead, and I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, that wasn't last month. You know, that was like, that was in
4 years ago.
That was in April of 2019. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. There's like this gap. It's like a Stephen King novel, you know, we've all just been.
Right. Really is.
It's really wild.
But,
yeah, it's crazy. So, but again, thank you so much. This has been a whole bunch of fun. And
super fun.
And we appreciate you taking the time out to speak with us.
It's great the way you guys do this, and I really enjoyed being part of it. So I'm really honored, and thank you so much.
Thank you. And you know, you called us brilliant twice. In you know, which is just, I wrote that down. You know,
no, she said it. No, Tom. She did not say that you or I are brilliant. She said it's brilliant. She was very careful in her choice of words.
Hey,
you know. You are it. He can conclude.
Right. Well, thanks a lot.
Anyway,
we hope to thank everybody for listening, and hope to see folks at ILTACon 22 in it's in National Harbor. It's not in Washington, D.C. I don't care what they say. It's outside of Washington, D.C. It's not even on a train line. It's not even on a subway line. You're gonna take an Uber down there. Drives me nuts. Rocky knows. You know, you're gonna wend your way down from Baltimore. So, but hope you know, if anybody's in the area, stop by. Both Rocky and I will be there, and we'd love to talk to you and catch up and see how things are going. So until next time, thanks for stopping in. We'll see you again in the on the eDiscovery channel.